I love the fact that I get all of you at 5:10 p.m., after you've been sitting here all day, everybody's had a big lunch. There's no cake left out there, so I know you're fully fed. My only hope here to do something with this lot right now is the fact that I think they left enough caffeine out there for all of you to be able to give me about 35 to 40 minutes of your presence. Is that a fair ask? Yes? Come on, give me a little more than that. We gotta wake up. We gotta wake up. They are ready. All right, cool. Well, Steve, will you stand up for 1 second? Yes, please. You guys just acknowledge my coach, Steve Hodgson, for 1 second, please. Him and I have been having a lot of conversations lately. I'm going through some seismic shifts in my life at the moment, and I had no idea he was going to be here. He's very, very tricky, as you guys already know. So I walked in there like, do you know Steve's here? I was like, yeah, I kind of had a feeling he might. He's got a way of surprising people. Can you guys see that? I can see it up here. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. They've given me an hour. I am not going to subject you to myself for an hour. I'm not going to do it. All right, maybe. We'll see. We'll see how engaged you are. But here's what I want to do. Originally, my intention was pretty straightforward. I wanted to come and share the story about running 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. Some of you have heard it already. Others have not. And I wanted to do that from a place of just this, giving you guys this visceral experience of what it's like to kind of think you have certain limits and then to be able to transcend them. And I'm still going to do that, and here's my ask on when we get to that story. For those of you who have heard it before, because there's a few of you, I'd ask you to forget it completely because I want to take you on a different journey. Can I get a beginner's mind from the people who have heard me speak about this before? Yes? Okay, perfect. And I want to wrap. When I was talking to Steve, and I was like, man, I got so much going on here right now. He's like, well, figure it out when you get there. Use everything that's going on in your life to just really add value. So the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've gone on a really deep internal journey. And I've tried to just really look back at my life. And I've been so fortunate to have certain levels of successes in my life and certain endeavors, plenty of failures too. And I really wanted to decode, right? If I could move the variables and just say there's this one thing, a lot of things impact your success, but there's this one thing that I can support with evidence and experience that's been the thing that's had the biggest impact in my life as it relates to these extraordinary things. For me, everybody's got their own limits that I think that I've accomplished. And the reason I wanted to do that is because when shit's not going right in your life, and when Matt was talking about when shit was not going right and the event was, burning down and you start questioning who you are, I want to leave this as a framework for you because each and every one of you will go through moments in your time when you really start questioning whether or not you are as good as you think you are. I don't care how good you are. It's going to happen to every single one. So this is my attempt at sharing something that I've been really trying to go deep into. And this is not like, I have a solution for you. Take this, buy my course, and we're going to do this together. It's none of that. I'm going to bring you on a journey, and it's still raw. And so instead of telling you, can you go back to that slide again, please? So let's start with that. There you go. It says, radical commitment, a superpower hidden in plain sight, right? And I'm calling it an exploration. So what it is not is Karan giving you life advice. Who am I to do that? But what I'm going to ask you to do is come on a journey with me, and I'm calling it an exploration specifically for a reason because words have meanings, right? This is not we're not going on a trip where you know the destination and we know when we get there what it's going to be like. Trips are fun, you look forward to it. And exploration by definition means we don't even know if we'll get there, right? And even if we get there, the experience we have will be the experience we've had first time, and we can conceptually think about what that experience might be, but you experientially do not know what that experience is, right? So stay in that frame of exploration with me. And what I explore with you is this concept that radical commitment, I'm going to define radical commitment for you, is this incredible, deep superpower that everybody has access to and nobody fucking uses. Sitting right there in plain sight. And I went back and I literally, and I love Steve for the space he's held for me over the last, month and a half. Man, I went deep. I was just like, what was happening in my life at this moment in time when shit was just fucking on autopilot? Like, I just couldn't be stopped. What was happening? No, that was not it. That variable was not there when it happened. So I literally condensed it down. And next slide, please. So what I want to do is, because it's an exploration, we're going to test a hypothesis together. All right? Are you guys up for doing that with me? Yes? Here's the hypothesis. I'm not telling you if it's true or it's not, but we're going to work through a handful of things, and I'm going to invite you to have an experience, not a concept, but an experience of where I'm taking you. So here's our hypothesis. We're going to use a scientific method, and we're going to say radical commitment is a superpower that unlocks exponential results. Thanks, Karan. That's helpful. We're testing it, right? So hold that in your head. Next slide, please. So if we're going to test this hypothesis, we have to get very clear about the terms, right? And I want to spend, with your permission, I want to spend just a couple minutes on this slide, and I want to talk about, and these are my terms. You can call them something different if you like, if it lands better. Relative commitment versus radical commitment. Everybody sitting in this room, without a doubt, knows what relative commitment is. There's people in the world out there who are not committed at all, kind of marginally committed. If you're sitting in this room and you're about this life, you guys are veterans of relative commitment. There's areas in your life where you are the top 5% of what you do. So let's take an example. All right, Karan, what does relative commitment look like? Make it more tangible for me. So let's take fitness as an example, right? So relative commitment is, I'm going to get fit, and that requires me to work out 5 or 6 times a week, and I'm going to have certain kind of a regimen for it, and then over the next year I'm kind of going to get fit, and even if you're doing that, you're already in the top 5%. And within that commitment will be moments when that commitment is tested. I only worked out 4 times this week. I'm still doing pretty good. Right? I just was on a flight. I'm a little tired. I know there's a gym in the building, but no one's gonna know. Right? It's the summer vacation's not for 2.5 more months, I'll just fast tomorrow. That's just one example. The fact that you worked out 4 days that week and the fact that you, in fact, ate clean for 6 days a week, you are already, congratulations, you're the top 5%. Let's celebrate that. This is not about, I want to create a distinction, because the reason you're sitting in this room is not because you want to be the top 5%. There's certain endeavor in your life, I don't know what that is because it's personal to you, where you want to be the fucking best. Right? You want to test yourself to be in this area of my life, in this one particular thing, how fucking good can I get? Is there anybody that feels that, or am I just a crazy one here? Right? And so radical commitment is kind of the what showed up for me, and let me give you an example of what radical commitment might look like. It's okay, let's use that same example. I am going to get down to, I'm making this up, 7% body fat. I'm going to do it in 90 days. I'm going to get all the help that I need. I don't have to do it alone. I'm going to have a program in place. And once I start that thing, either I'm going to fucking do it or I'm going to die. That sounds so calm down, Karan. Right? I ain't asking you to do it. I'm not asking you to do it. I'm explaining something to you. So you can pick and choose and see, are there areas of your life that call for that kind of a commitment? Because let me be clear. The difference between uncommitted and relatively committed is nothing compared to the difference between relatively committed and radically committed. It's not even in the same fucking universe. It's not. And you just need to know that. And again, this is not, I'm not calling forth for all of us to, and here's the beauty of radical commitment. Next slide, please. You can know what you're radically committed to by your results, not by what you say your commitments are. It's right there. Business is not where you want it to be. Yeah, there's external factors. We all know that. But we're talking about controlling the controllables. Your health is not where you want it to be. You're not at your peak of whatever that one endeavor is. Right? Like, I want you to just sit with that for a moment, because like radical commitment will absolutely alter your universe, and it is really, really difficult. Next slide, please. So, I was toying with this idea for a while, and it finally crystallized for me. A radical commitment is a statement of what is. When you make a commitment that I'm making this up, $1 million next calendar year, right? Great, that commitment is lasting over a period of time. When you say I'm going to get fit over the next 90 days, that commitment's lasting a period of time. And so what radical commitment really is are these micro commitments that you make in every moment. If you say you want to lose 15, 20 pounds, 100 pounds, whatever the number is, and and I'll get to it tomorrow, or I can do part of it tomorrow, you might not even be alive tomorrow. You can't commit to something that you don't control. This is a nuance. I really want you to get it. Radical commitment is a statement of what is. What is only in this very present moment. That's it. You cannot commit to something tomorrow. And that's the beauty and the power of it. Because you don't have to get bogged down by I have this massive goal and here's all the things I need to do. No, you're going to maniacally commit to what is that one thing that you're committed to doing in this very moment. And then this very moment. And then fucking this very moment. And that is a completely different paradigm. Because why? Because we all already know, we're all highly enlightened human beings. We all know the only thing we ever have is the moment of now. Thank you, Eckhart Tolle. Where else are you going to make a commitment? Tomorrow? Good luck. Next slide, please. Okay, so just play with this for a moment, right? What if, just what if, everything you want in your life is just a radical commitment away? And I just told you that you literally control that radical commitment in this very moment. So literally, everything that it is that you need to alter your life to a point where you can't even recognize, you alter your life to a point where they would have to change your biography. You guys with me? Yep. Right? That is what where I'm trying to take you today. So with that, next slide, please. Thank you for letting me set the stage. This is the framework. This container I've just created for us, now we're going to go into story time. But I wanted to create this container because I wasn't even talking to, I was talking to your subconscious mind this entire time. You cannot unhear what I have said to you. I don't care what judgments you have about me standing on the stage, about the people sitting next to you. You cannot unhear it. So thank you for being patient and listening. All we did there was create a container through which now I'm going to tell you a story. Why am I going to tell you a story? Simply because that's how we learn. Everyone who's taught you something meaningful that has lasted for you has been somebody, just listen to this for me, is somebody who actually went through the thing they're teaching you, and they had experiential knowledge of the thing, to the point where that thing had metabolized in their bones, and they were speaking it out of themselves. That is completely different when somebody speaks to you from a place of a concept. Do you understand me? So, the story, when told by someone who was literally breathing it out of them, and this just happens to be my story, everybody in this room has a story like that they should be sharing with the world. I just happen to be the one who's standing here who's going to share the story with you. But that's the place I'm going to take you, and the reason I'm going to do that is because before you leave this room today, I want you to have an experience of what it is to feel radical commitment. I don't want you to think about it. If anybody's taking notes, just knock it off. That's not what this is about. I'll send you the slide deck. You do not understand this concept unless you have experienced this concept. And I stand in full commitment, if you guys will play all out with me. I'm going to take you on a journey, and I'm going to allow you to experience what it is like to go through a radical commitment to a particular endeavor. So, can I get a hell yes if you guys are open to having experience? All right, let's go. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's the story. We created the container. You guys are being a really good-looking, delicious audience, so thank you for that. And now we're going to do some work, and here's the best part. The work that I have for you is simply open your minds, open your hearts, and for the next 25, 30 minutes, just let this come in. Here's the best part. If it doesn't land on you, when I'm off the stage, write me off. I'm just a creation of you, right? So you are giving up no leverage by allowing me this 35 to 40 minutes or 25 to 30 minutes to take you on this journey. So with that, okay, here's the story. Some of you have heard it before, World Marathon Challenge. It's a bizarre event created by some sadistic people, okay? So let me tell you what it is for those of you who have not heard me speak about it before. And I do not know if this is true, but this is how I kind of envision it. There's a couple of people that are sitting in a room, and one of them says, how do we make people really suffer? You know? And this group is kind of the kind of people that really like to one-up each other. The other one's like, I know, let's make them run a marathon. The guy's like, yeah, that's good. That sounds horrible, painful. And the other guy's like, well, let's make them run 2. Right? And the guy who's sitting in the corner is like, no, fuck that. Let's make them run 7 in a week. Right? They're all giggling. They're like, yeah, that sounds terrible. And the fourth guy's like, yeah, but what if we made them do it on each of the 7 continents in 168 hours? So they didn't have time to sleep or really eat, and they had to be on a plane, and then no place to shower, and then we just, yeah, how about that? And they were like, bingo. So congratulations. That's how, in my head, this event got created. The event's called World Marathon Challenge, and that's exactly what this event is. And let me tell you how I heard about it, because we're talking about being here, and you will catch where I'm going with this. So I was at an event about a year and a half ago. I like to do just crazy things that I get to my mind through my body, right? We all have our own modalities. For me, when I push my body, there's something about it that just really clarifies my mind, and it takes me to a place where I have a level of clarity that I like to operate in. So this just happened to be something called ice camp. A bunch of us crazies were on a frozen lake in Minnesota, and like minus 30 degrees, cut a hole with the auger, and we were all going, cold bathing in that thing. And then afterwards, I'm sitting at this table, and it was a group of guys, and we were all sharing, like, what's the one thing we're planning on doing this year that has the potential to shift us either emotionally, physically, or spiritually? Well, I was like, what a beautiful dialogue. And the guy who's sitting across from me, I did not know him at the time. His name's Ben. He's one of my closest friends now. This dude goes, it's his turn. People are like, oh, I'm going to do this. And this guy's, he's like the 6'2" dude from Colorado, super fit, more hair at his age than anybody should have. Casually sitting there just, eating his piece of steak. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to run 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. Eric, he's sitting like you and me with this table in the middle. You have those moments where like your brain just explodes? And I literally was like, I don't think I heard that right. I was like, he's like, yeah, this thing called World Marathon Challenge. I was like, what do you mean? Like 7 marathons? He's like, yeah, 7 marathons. I was like, yeah, but like full marathons? You got to go. He's like, yeah, 26.2 miles, 42 kilometers. It's like every day. He's like, yep. In every continent. It's like, yeah. It's like Antarctica? It's like, that's the first one. I am like, what? This is a thing? It's like, how many people have done it before? He goes, well, they have this thing called the Intercontinental Marathon Club. And at that point, there was 128 people that had accomplished it, or 138 people that had accomplished it. And I'm just so curious at this point. This is probably one of my favorite qualities about myself is I'm a child. I'm so curious about how humans conduct themselves in this beautiful thing we call life. And so I'm like, Ben, 7 days, huh? Where do you sleep? He's like, on the plane, bro. I was like, on the plane? He's like, yeah, we get on the plane. They try to space it out, so it's like 8 hours flight time, 7 hours flight time. You land, you run a marathon. You hop on, you land, you run a marathon. And I was like, wow. I was like, well, what do you eat? Because obviously, if you do marathon training, any of those who have done it, there's like a lot of caloric needs, and you're trying to eat clean. And he looks at me and he goes, bro, plain food. Like I'm the idiot, right? And I'm like, wow. So you're trying to sleep on an airplane and eating like plain food, and then you got to run marathons? I was like, where do you shower? And he's like, dude, you don't. Baby wipes. I got a little different reaction. And so, even now, like, having gone through that experience, like, I want you to imagine you being in a place, and again, I was not a runner when I heard this conversation. I, fancy myself fairly fit, but I was an endurance athlete. And so the expansion that happened in my mind in that moment in time is something that I will never forget, ever. And the commitment with which this man casually let me know that he was going to, there was no doubt in his mind he was going to do it. Right? He barely looked up from cutting his hot dog or whatever he was eating, And I was just like, wow, okay, this is incredible. And one thing I've learned in my life, whatever little successes I've had, is every time I've leaned into the unknown, it's given me not always the outcome I wanted, but it's given me an experience that I've always looked back on and said, man, I'm so fucking glad I did that. Or man, I'm so fucking glad I went through that. There's never been a time where I've been tested and I came back and said, man, there's times where I was like, man, the outcome could have been different, but I've never come back and said that I shouldn't have done that. So I was like, when is this thing? He's like, yeah, it's in like 7 months. And I was like, I'm gonna do it with you. And he looks up at me. He's like, seriously? I was like, yeah. He goes, do you run? I was like, no, not really. and he goes, you're dead ass. And I was like, yeah. He's like, how do I do it? He goes, well, let me put you in touch with the race director. So he puts me in touch with the race director. I call the race director up, and I'm like, hey, I want to do this race. And he asked me for my running credentials and tells me I am severely underqualified, non-qualified to join this endeavor. And I was like, well, why? He goes, because you don't run. I was like, that's a fair point. Okay, got it. So yeah, either way, we had 7 months. I told him, listen, I'm just really hard-headed. I love a challenge. I'm not here to try to break records. I just want to compete and have an experience. So I would like to give it a go. And after much cajoling, he said, sure, you're an idiot. I'll take your money. So I signed up. Next slide, please. So this is my dad. I'm going to talk about him in a minute. Going back to this frame that I set for you about these commitments, right? Like in that moment in time, when I heard this man who had 2 legs and 2 feet just like I did, might have been a couple inches taller, maybe slightly better looking, right? But I saw him with a level of comfort commit to something that was mind-blowing for me. That was a moment of choice. That was a moment of, I could just shirk down from that. I'm going to do a bunch of research. I'll figure out if it's right. Maybe like, what does it cost? What is it, And I realize everybody's in different positions in their life, but I want you to stick with this concept. And I didn't even realize at the time what I was doing, but I just made a radical commitment in that moment in time to seize this opportunity to test myself, because I knew even if I never got to the place where I could finish it, the person I would become in the process of attempting to do something like this would change me. You guys follow me? Yeah? So anytime I take on ridiculous tasks, I have one cheerleader, which is my dad. He's never stopped me from doing anything ridiculous in my life ever. The rest of my family thinks I'm absolutely bananas. And so when I'm doing things that are going to be challenging, one of the things, and I learned this with my work for Steve, or with Steve rather, is we're not going to be done in 15 minutes, whatever that is. You guys can turn it off. It ain't happening. Was if you're doing something for yourself, you have access to a certain level of being. But when you do it in service to someone else, there's this greatness in you that you get access to, but you only get access to it if you're being in service. Like, it just is such a beautiful little concept. And the whole idea, if you'll do more for others than you'll do for yourself. So I was like, all right, here's what we're going to do. Like, I want to tie this to doing something special for my dad. My dad spent 22 years in the military. He was a special forces guy. He's one of my heroes, and he suffers from Parkinson's. And he used to be an adventurer, an athlete, and just was always out there just, moving through the world. And now, at that point in time, it was like, I had to take him to the bathroom. So I was like, I'm going to do this for him. So it was like, Dad, we're going to raise money for Parkinson's Foundation. Shit ton of money. And I'm going to go run this in your honor. And my dad was like, hell yes. The rest of my family is like, what are you doing? Knock it off. So this is just a reminder, right? Like, when you're thinking about these big ideas, I'm just sprinkling some thoughts in your subconscious. See if there's a way, when you find that one thing that you want to do, that you're like, man, I don't even know if I can do it. See if you can find a way to do that in service of somebody else. You'll be fucking surprised at the reserves it opens up for you. Next slide. Okay, let's talk briefly about the race. So this is the race. Can you guys see this all right? Okay, so after I committed to doing this, I started doing research on what it is that I've committed to. Seems like a fairly reasonable way to handle your life. So I got this map from the event organizer, and I got to be honest with you, the first time I was like, I shit my pants. I was just like, what have I done? So they're like, oh, you're going to fly to Cape Town. That's going to be the home base for the first day. From Cape Town, we're going to take a Russian aircraft that's going to take us onto a glacier in Antarctica. We're going to put on crampons and run a marathon in minus 50 degrees on a glacier. Then we're going to fly back to Cape Town. It's going to be 90 degrees warm, right? It's like February in the southern hemisphere. And from there, we're going to fly to Perth, Australia, Western Australia. From there, we're going to go to Dubai. From Dubai, we're going to run a marathon in Madrid. Then we're going to go to Fortaleza in Brazil, and then we're going to finish in Miami. And I was like, holy shit, I got to start running. That was literally the first time I was like, okay, well, I got 7 months, and then the reality of the check clearing and this thing showing up, and I'm like, okay, it just became real. All right, what do you want to do? Again, next commitment. Next slide, please. So I said, I have never done this before. I'm fully committed to doing it. Who has done something like this before that I can lean on, that again has this shit metabolized in their bones, that can just speak it out and be a guide? Right? So I said, I'm going to find one of the best endurance coaches that's walking this planet. So this is a gentleman right here, one of my good friends, my endurance coach. This guy's Chris Houth. He's an Olympian. He's won Kona in his age bracket. He coaches some of the most elite endurance athletes that you can think of. I know him through my friend Jesse Itzler. Got his number, called him up. It's like, hey man, you don't know me, but I need you to coach me to do this event. It's like, okay, well, what's the event? I tell him. He's like, oh wow. He's like, yeah, that's the big dog. I was like, yeah. He goes, okay. He goes, all right, 6 months. What's your weekly mileage right now? And I literally go, driving? I kid you not. This is a real conversation. And he just goes like, you gotta be shitting me. He's like, have you been running at all? I was like, not really, but we got 7 months. He's like, do you know how long it takes to build endurance for something like this? Like for your joints to get stabilized, for your tendons to be healthy enough to be able to endure just the training that I'm going to need to put you through, let alone actually going and doing the event? He was like, no, but that's why I hired you. So he goes, all right, same. He's like, I would advise maybe, do it next year. Keep that in the back of your head. I will do it next year. Right? It has been such an easy, okay, well, I can commit to doing it next year. I don't have to do it right now. He's telling me that you know I shouldn't be doing it. Can you guys turn that off, please, if you don't mind? We're not going to be done in that time. I'm in a flow now, so now you guys are my captive audience. You did this to yourself. Okay, so I had this conversation with him, and he's like, okay, Karan, this is highly aggressive. I would advise you against it, but I can see that you're stubborn. Because here's what I told him. I was like, can you get me in the absolute best physical shape that you can get me? And I realize it's not going to be perfect. But here's what I'll tell you. I've done a lot of work on myself mentally. If it comes down to just being able to just endure suffering, I'm like, I like my chances, right? Can you just get my body to a place where it's not going to break down? He goes, okay, here's what we got to do. We probably need like 18 months of training. You only have 6 months left. So what we can do is we can accelerate training. And one way to do that is to have you train at altitude. I'm living in New York City, right? I was on the 8th floor. I guess I could have, I had a little bit of altitude. So he goes, I was like, okay, got it. Because I was like, that's really important? He goes, yeah, that's really important, with red blood cells, yada, yada. No physicians here probably know what he's talking about. I'm like, done. He goes, what do you mean done? I was like, how's Denver? It's like, it's a mile high. Is that high enough? He's like, well, what about it? I was like, I'm moving to Denver. He's like, when? I was like, tomorrow. He's like, what? I was like, I'll get an Airbnb for 6 months in Denver, and like, we'll start training. Like, done. So you're just telling me all the things that you need. I'm telling you I'm willing to do them. Let's not create a big scene here. Like, And he's like, you're nuts. I'm like, I am. Let's go. So I literally, we don't realize when we do these things, and this is why I've kind of gone back and recreated like my big wins, because I'm trying to codify it and share it with you guys. In that moment, it didn't even occur to me to not say yes to the fact like I was so fucking committed to doing this and raising money for Parkinson's. Like, this is just happening. So he's like, okay. Well, he goes, all right, well, good. If you're going to do that, here's the plan. You're going to be working out 7 days a week. You're going to be running multiple times a day. Towards the tail end, I'm going to get you to a place where you're going to be running 70 to 90 miles a week. I'm not running at all at this point, right? And so I'm like, holy shit, that sounds like a lot. But I sat with it, and I actually had a conversation with Steve about this, and I was like, man, what, and he brought me back to like, one of Steve's like, who do you need to be? Like, you think about the tactical stuff, like, who do you need to be in order for you to be able to do this? And it blurted out of my mouth, right? I was like, shit, like, I was 45 at the time, it's a year and a half ago. It's like, I need to be the fittest 45-year-old I know. Like, no, in my head, I need to be one of the fittest 45-year-olds walking this fucking planet for me to even attempt to do that. He's like, well, go be that, right? So next slide. That's exactly what I did, right? So this is not to impress you, just Steve maybe, but it's guys, I'm a middle-aged private equity guy living in New York who's never run a fucking day in his life, right? And all I did was make a commitment because it was important to me to do that for my father. It was important for me to raise money. It was important for me to test myself. And that micro commitment showed up in the next 6 months, whatever's required. I'll move to Denver. I'll get up at 5 o'clock. I'll run 15 miles. By the time I got to this place, this was about 6 weeks before I was getting ready to go on for the race. I was getting up in the mornings, going into the mountains at 8,000, 9,000 feet elevation, running 20 miles, coming back home, getting on my calls and running my 3 companies at like 9 a.m. Right? And imagine what that human being was feeling, right? And it was all these minor little commitments that happened, these radical commitments that happened every day. So I'm feeling good. I'm running 20 miles a day easy. I'm like, I got this. I don't know what they were talking about, right? Like, I got 6 weeks to go, 7 weeks to go. I'm gonna be golden. I can do this. Like, the confidence was really building. And then life just has a really beautiful way to give you the lessons that you need, right? You don't always get to pick what the lessons are. So I was 6 weeks away. I decided to go up to close to Pikes Peak, which is about 13,000 feet, and I was gonna get a big training run in at Pikes Peak. And I ended up getting a very severe case of something called HAPE. It's high altitude pulmonary edema. I see the docs nodding their heads. And it was a pretty severe case, and I didn't know what it was. All I knew was all of a sudden I couldn't breathe, and I started coughing up this pink fluid like blood, and every time I would go to take a breath, it would feel like I was drowning in my own fluids. They did a pulse ox thing, and my pulse ox was at like 68. They're like, gotta rush you to the ER, like what the hell's going on? So next slide. So from that to, they've seen enough of that slide. You can give them the next one. To that. Like, this is life, guys, right? So from feeling like I'm on the top of the world, I literally, like, you know, in my version of Superman, I'd never been that fit cardiovascularly, never been that just focused and lasered in on anything in my life for a while. From that to 7 weeks before we're getting ready to leave, I have this. I'm in the hospital for like 3 days for observation, and I'm a complete mess, right? You know, there's oxygen in there. They just can't get my oxygen levels to stabilize. They keep taking that cannula off, and they just keeps dropping down to like the mid-70s. So they're like, okay. And then they do an MRI, and they show me the MRI, and it's just like, I don't know anything about it. And it's my lungs. And I'm like, oh, those look so pretty. There's like all this white spread, you know, just like a spider web in my lungs on both sides. And they're like, yeah, that's fluid. It's supposed to be black. There's not supposed to be anything there. So they're like, I got perforated lungs or something, and there's a bunch of stuff going on. And now, mind you, when you're training for an endurance event, you're building your fitness in your lungs, right? So it took me 3-4 days to get out of the hospital. I actually ended up going home to, you know, see my family a little after Thanksgiving, and all of them are telling me, okay, well, hey, you know, really good go. You gave it a go, and you know, you just need to rest and heal now. And in my head, I'm thinking, mission's not complete. Right? I was in such a different mental state. These were not conscious decisions I was making. I wasn't like, today I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna just, no. It's like, mission's not complete. And so, I made another micro radical commitment. I sat down with my family. They were genuinely concerned about me. My son had an intervention. My 19-year-old son at the time had an intervention with me. Like, Dad, what are you doing? Like, you don't have to prove anything to anybody. And like, you know, it's like, I love you guys. It's not for that. I believe I still have it within me. At the very least, like, I've trained so hard. At least when I show up at the starting line, and you know, let me run a couple miles. We'll take it from there. Like, don't deny me that pleasure with your guilt. I wasn't going to have it anyway, but you know, I let him kind of sit in it. So we ended up agreeing to the fact that, okay, you know, you can, Karan, go and run if you feel better. So fine. 3 weeks later, fitness is not there, but I'm back on it, and I'm getting ready to, kind of starting to feel good again. And then 8 days, literally 8 days before I'm getting ready to leave on this event, I have to fly from Denver to Fort Lauderdale for an investor meeting, and I haven't been on the beach in so long because I've been running in the mountains. And like, I had a 10-mile schedule for that day, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm at the beach. The sun's coming up. You know, I'm just remembering, like, I'm gonna go for a little, you know, run on the beach with the sun, and just really enjoy my morning. And I did that. And mile 5, I ended up twisting something in my knee, and I fell down in pain. And I couldn't get back up. I had to call an Uber. I get home or get to the hotel room. I called my coach. I was like, man, something's wrong. I just can't. Like, he has me press a couple different. He's like silence. He's like, you've probably torn a ligament. I was like, no fucking way. Nope, not happening. He said, like, go get an MRI. Sure enough, you got a partial tear. So I asked the physician, I'm like, okay, how do we fix it? He's like, oh, it's totally fine. You know, this is pretty common practice. We can do stem cells, we can do an invasive surgery, we can take like a tendon out of your quad or this place and that place, and we can, yeah, we can do that. I was like, no. How do we fix it in 8 days? He's like, well, Karan, you don't. And I'm like, well, we kind of have to. And he's like, what are you talking about? Karan, I was like, guys, I'm committed to going there, and you got to give me something. Like, there's something you can do. He's like, no, you can't walk 7 miles, let alone run 7 marathons. This is craziness. So I was like, okay, let me ask you a different question. It's like, how bad could I fuck it up? Right? Like, literally, he looks at me, he's like, you're serious? I was like, well, you tell me you're you got great surgeons. They fix this shit all the time, right? Like, how bad? Would you have to amputate my leg? I'd think now, like, how bad can I fuck it up? He goes, you're going to tear the shit out of this ligament, going to need multiple surgeries, you're going to have X, Y, and Z. And I was like, but you're telling me you can fix it. He goes, I wouldn't advise it, but I guess. And he goes, but more importantly, there's no way you're going to be able to go and run marathons. Like, I'm not, you guys are imposing your goals on me. I just want to go start, man. Like, let me get on a fucking plane right after all this training, and let me go take my first step and see whether or not I can actually, run a mile, and I'll call it a day. So I got the okay from my physician to go do that. Again, in that moment in time when I was having that conversation, it didn't even occur to me that in that moment, I was making this radical commitment. In that moment, it wasn't a planned out thing. It was my way of being. My way of being was such that the only thing that could come out of me was a fucking radical commitment. Did you guys hear that? Yeah. Right? So I was like, okay. So we were like, all right, we're going. We got green light, My family thinks I'm nuts. My dad thinks I'm amazing. Next slide, please. So we decide to get going. This is my buddy Ben. I want to introduce him in a minute. So I called Ben up. I'm like, dude, I got all clear. And, and he knew I was pretty bummed about the whole thing. So we get to Cape Town the first day, and all we want to do is, I haven't run in 8 days. I have no idea what my leg's going to do. And we have a shakeout run. And a shakeout run is simply you go out for a couple miles to see, how your legs. I don't know if I can walk right now. I'm in fucking Cape Town with all my gear ready to go. So he's like, you sure about this? I'm like, yeah, we're doing it. Let's go for a shakeout run. Just, keep your pace down, I'll be fine. Half mile into the shakeout run, my knee is just throbbing pain. I'm literally like dragging my foot like this. I'm a mess emotionally, and I might even been like, a couple of tears might have come out. I'm like, what the fuck? I did all of this, and here I am, and now, I'm not gonna be able to do any of this. And this is why it is so important to have people in your life that fight for your greatness, not for your limitations. My buddy Ben, he goes, come here. Because he's on his phone on YouTube or something. He goes, you can walk, right? It's like, yeah, walking is fine. It's just like when my foot hits, there's a sharp pain, and he's like, okay, you can walk. He goes, I just Googled the world speed walking record. He's like, it's like 5 minutes and some seconds. He goes, you can speed walk 7-minute miles. And I was like, shit, I think I can. He goes, you want to give it a go? Next slide, please. So this is me in Cape Town. You're going to have to hit on that so you can play it. This is me on Cape Town after almost breaking down and saying that, I don't even know if I can walk. Can you click on that slide to make it play? Is that possible? Or I'm going to have to do a live demonstration of a speed walk, which I want to save, not expose all these people to. Pardon? Okay, no worries. So that was a video of me in Cape Town after just breaking down, being like, oh my God, just because I made a commitment that I'm not going to quit, there might be a new solution. Can I speed walk this thing? So I kid you, I'm literally like, you know what I mean? And he's timing me. So I'm like, I can do 8.5 minute miles speed walking. So I'm fired up. So at this point, I'm like, all right, you know what? And he looks at me, he's like, dude, we're not fucking quitting. So whatever it takes, we're going to get you to that starting line. And that was the only promise I'd made for myself. So we load up, we get on the plane, we go to Antarctica the next day. We fly in, it's like minus 30 degrees. Next slide, please. Give you guys a visual of what Antarctica looked like. We are literally on a glacier. There's no runway. They land the plane on the glacier, just slides till it comes to a stop. They had some surveying equipment, so they just made sure there were no crevasses. And they ended up just making a course for us. And they're like, don't go too far away from the plane. And we're running these back and forth routes. So that's, it just fully covered up. It's brutal. And I start kind of walking, speed walking, and kind of going through the process. And all of a sudden, like, the pain gets so bad around the 5 mile mark. Like, I'm getting ready to tap out. Like, it is brutal, right? Like, and I have a pretty high threshold for pain, and I'm kind of doing this. And as I'm doing this, at one point, my friend comes in Ben's coming from the other side, and he looks at me, and he can tell, like, he can just sense that I'm about to quit. I know I'm about to quit. I've done my part, right? I've gotten this far. And he just looks at me, and he goes, don't you fucking quit. And I'm about to tell him how bad it hurts, He goes, just not right now. You can quit in a little bit, just not right now. Just don't quit right now. Like, can you do that for me? Can you just not quit right now? And he literally was like, don't you fucking quit right now. And I don't know what it was, like some kind of voodoo magic that he did, right? Or like some part of my being woke up and I was like, okay. And then in that moment, I had this realization of, next slide, please. I have another buddy who's a heavy-duty endurance athlete. It's a PDF, so that won't work either. But this guy is Jason. He runs 100-mile races all the time. And right before I went, I consulted with him. And I'm like, when you get to the place where your body's broken down and nothing is working and you are in pain, like how do you still keep going? What do you access? Right? Like how do you do it? And he just looked at me and he goes, I just asked myself one question. It's like, if I had to do it or I would die, could I? Everything else is just a negotiation with yourself. Right? That's a radical commitment. Think about that. Like, not that you're going to die, but to get yourself in that place where you're like, hey, you know what? No, this is how they're going to get done. That woke something else up. And this is the part I really want to land on you guys, because we're talking about commitment, but I told you commitment is a superpower. So here's the superpower part of that commitment. There is a part of you that is so incredibly great. There's a part of you that you haven't even explored yet that is, if you knew who the fuck you were, and you will not get access to that part of you. You'll go to your grave not getting access to that part of you unless in some endeavor in your life, whatever that is for you, your family, your work, your health, something, until you make a radical commitment to just fucking go check it out one time. And what woke up inside of me, next slide, please. After that, it was just like, we're not fucking quitting. Like, they can take me up, I don't care. And every day the pain, this is me finishing the first one, next slide, I'm gonna hurry through the rest, thank you. But every day the pain got worse. So this was Antarctica, this was Cape Town. By the time I got to that one, that was in Perth. 3 of my toenails had come off. They were floating around in my shoe. So every time my foot would hit, it would just be this searing pain. By the time I got to here, this is Madrid. I had a stress fracture in my right leg that took 6 months to heal, right? This was 108 degrees in Fortaleza, Brazil, and that was Miami. But here's what I'm telling you this. Every time the pain got to a point where I was like, this is not bearable, it was only not bearable to that version of me. And when I sat in my commitment, something else woke up, and that could handle that pain like it was nothing. It was not even pain, it was sensation. It was just a sensation. You guys follow me? You guys with me? So like, that is the superpower that each one of you has, and you can choose where you want to apply it, but you will not have access to it. Absolutely will not have access to it until you find a way to change your definition of commitment. Keep commitment in areas of your life, but pick fucking one. Pick one thing in your life. Do it for 6 months, I implore you, and make this level of radical commitment, and fucking call me in 6 months. Because I want to talk to that person. Like, that's how powerful this is. So, next slide, please. So this is me. I'm done, finally finished, got a boot, stress fracture. Look at that perfectly wrapped little toe with no nails. And look at that smile on that dude's face, right? He would have done this 100 times over. Had nothing to do with the medals or the accolades. It's like, man, I got to witness a part of me. Like, all of us are here talking about being. All of us are sitting here talking about raising our consciousness. It's already in it. You already have it. There's no place to go get it. It's a superpower that's sitting in plain sight, and every fucking single person in this room has access to it. And all it takes is radical commitment in one area of your life, and you'll get access to that person. And when you get a hold of that person, he or she will show up in every area of your life. Because you can't undo it. You can't unsee it. So, next slide. So I told you, like, be really, really careful when your mind tells you, like, next year. That's my dad. And every time, dude, that dude's still haunting me from over there. I did this for him, and I remember when sitting down with my family and having the conversation about, hey, let's just do it next year. Like, he passed away 6 months. And he was in so much pain with Parkinson's, and he had such limited mobility. I ran it for him, I gave him all the medals, and I would go visit him, and on the weekends, he'd be sitting outside in the lawn in some, in sunshine, polishing the medals. These dumbass medals. You know what I mean? Like, it meant so much to him, right? And if I had just said, because of my lack of commitment, I'll do it fucking next year, I would have missed out on giving my father a gift that fucking I gave to myself because I get to keep this memory forever. So, next slide, please. Damn you, Dad. That's my pops. You just never know. Completely accidental 6 months later. He's no longer there, and I'm just so grateful that I had the ability to just, do it. And like, this is not a sob story, right? Like, this is, like, all of you guys are just giving up on opportunities because you're deferring for some other time because you don't think you have what it takes. And God damn it, man, you're sitting on it. Like, just go access it. Like, what the fuck are you waiting for? Every single one of you. Next slide. So, that was my hypothesis. And I wanted to take you on a journey. I wanted you to feel it here, not here. I see a few of you. I know it landed. So I'm really grateful for your time. I really am. I'm not a professional speaker. This is not what I do. I have a day job. I run a private equity firm. I'm an entrepreneur. But when this group asked me to come and call and speak, like the promise that I made Steve a long time ago, I will never speak to this group about anything that is just not a visceral lived experience for me. And so that's what I wanted to serve you with today. And so this is where we are. You guys get to make your mind. I took you on an adventure. I gave you an experience, hopefully. I've left that hypothesis out there for you. I need you to go test it for yourself. It's really simple. One thing in your life, 6 months, radical. You guys already know how to be the top 5%. Who gives a shit? Find one place where you want to be the top 0.001%. Because it's not about what you will get. It's who you will become. It's so cliche, and it's so true. So, repeat after me. Radical commitment is a statement of what is. Beautiful. Next slide. You can know what you are radically committed to by your results, not by what you say your commitments are. This will be fun. Beautiful. Next slide. Radical commitment. No, stop. Only say this one if it landed for you. If it hasn't landed yet, go back and watch this talk. Find something else. What I'm asking you to do right now is a radical commitment. And I can't ask you to make one unless you believe in it. So only say this line if you genuinely believe what I've shared with you, that if you choose to make radical commitments, it'll alter your universe. If you believe that, not here, if you've had an experience of that, only then repeat this line. I'm going to read it, and I want you to read it after me if you agree. Radical commitment is indeed a superpower that unlocks exponential results. You guys are amazing. All right, one more slide. Hold on, I'm not done with you guys yet. Shouldn't have given me the mic at 5:10. Next slide, please. I think we're pretty much there. All right, so this is it, right? Right here. I was not here to deliver entertainment for you. That is not what I fucking do. And I'm not here to teach you anything. You're all grown adults. But you came here on your own volition. You came here because something called you to come and find some expansion in some area of your life. If that is, in fact, the reason you are here, I implore you to sit with these questions in your own time. What single radical commitment could change your life? It could be anything. The commitment is just a tool to get you to access a part of you that is just beyond anything you can imagine. And are you willing to make that commitment? Hell yeah. Yes? So are you, Ankush, you willing to make that commitment? Hell yeah. Ankush, anybody else all in? Yeah. Let's go. All right, last slide. They tell me you should finish presentations with a quote. So there's your quote. You guys can read it on your own time. I'm done. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time. Cheers.